G'day, this video is part 4 of the post-track maintenance series, and in this one we will be having a detailed look at the hardest working system on the track, and that's the brakes. Details next. I'm Mark Louth from Black Dog Motorsport, and if you or someone you know has the black dog chasing them, there are some links in the description which you may find useful. As I said in the intro, the brakes work super hard when you take your car to the track, significantly harder than they will ever work on a public road. While your brakes may be required to be used to their maximum capacity on a public road, in the case of an emergency for example, it is fair to say that this will not happen often. It will not happen at racing speeds, and it certainly will not happen time after time in quick succession. The result of this is your brake system in its entirety will be subject to a massive increase in wear, an order of magnitude more of any increase on any other system in the vehicle. So where does that leave us in a post-track maintenance perspective, or from a post-track maintenance perspective? What physical things can we service to help with the longevity of the components and the continued functioning of the component? Well, the simple answer is not much, and that's because brakes are pretty much a consumable item. So while we cannot service much of the brake system, we can, and absolutely should, thoroughly inspect all of the brake components after every trip to the track. This image here is what the standard brakes fitted to my BRZ look like after one track day, held at Sydney Motorsport Park. Now, Sydney Motorsport Park is not a track that is hard on brakes, yet the hot spots and grooving of the disc is plain to see. It should also be noted the car had only about 4,000 kilometres on it when this photo was taken. Now, it should come as no surprise that I very quickly modified the brakes to cope with this, and while that could make an interesting video in itself, it is outside the scope of this video, which is about maintaining what you have. So leaving modification aside, let's move on. Outside of inspection and replacement of worn components like brake pads and brake discs, the only thing we can really service in the brake system, believe it or not, is the brake fluid. And it's kind of important to do that if you track your car, and here's why. Without getting too technical, the brake system is a hydraulic system, and the effectiveness of the system and the longevity of the system is dependent on many factors. Not least among them is the fluid. If the fluid becomes contaminated, has moisture ingress, or starts to break down, the operation of the brakes and the longevity of the brake system's hydraulic components can be severely affected. One factor that can cause the brake fluid to break down is excessive heat. All brake fluids have a boiling point, and while it is highly unlikely that point will ever be reached during normal driving, it is very easy to reach on a racetrack, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is an issue. So what do we do about it? Well, we could change the fluid from the standard fluid like this one here and replace it with a fluid with a higher boiling point like this one here. And while this is a great idea and one I strongly recommend you do if you are going to track your car, for the purposes of this video, let's assume that you haven't. So how do you know if your fluid has boiled? Well, first we need to clarify a couple of things, and that's the difference between brake fluid boiling and brake fade, as these two phenomena are often confused. Brake fade occurs when the temperature of the brakes reaches a point where the coefficient of friction between the friction material, in this case the brake pads, and the rotating assembly, in this case the brake disc, starts to reduce. Once brake fade starts, any further application of the pedal increases the temperature further. The coefficient of friction reduces in line with that temperature increase, and the brake fades to the point where the brakes fail to work at all. During this process, the brake pedal remains firm and feels normal, except the brakes are not slowing the car down. Brake fluid boiling, on the other hand, results in a situation where the brake pedal becomes spongy or indeed goes straight to the floor. This is because the fluid is turning into a gas, the same way that water turns into steam when it boils, and that is what causes the spongy pedal. You cannot compress a liquid, but you can compress a gas. Now, to complicate matters further, brake fade can occur first, and then the resultant heat transfers to the fluid, causing it to boil, resulting in a spongy pedal. So you end up with a chicken and egg scenario. Either way, it does not really matter which is which from a maintenance perspective. If either has occurred, we need to take steps to mitigate the effects, and the simple way to do that is to bleed the brakes, even if the pedal pressure returns to normal after the brakes have cooled. For a normal road car on a club track day, bleeding of the system is likely to be sufficient, as it would more than likely only be the fluid in close proximity to the caliper pistons that has got hot enough to boil, although it certainly would not hurt to replace the fluid entirely. Okay, to summarise, the braking system is the system that works the hardest and is more susceptible to abnormal wear than any other system on the car if we take the car to the track. The single best tool we have to maintain the brake system after a track day is the Mark 1 eyeball. Look at everything, and if it doesn't look right, replace it. Secondly, bleed your brakes. It's not hard and it will remove any heat damage fluid if it exists from the system, and as far as precautionary measures go with the brake system, this is probably right at the top of the list. Well, that's about it for the brake system. In the next video I will be looking at tyres, suspension and steering systems, so watch out for that. If you would like to be notified when that video goes live, please consider subscribing. It is free. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.